Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I'd review this little video that I did find very particularly interesting. And this video is going to entail, and it is going to be a video by the Skip and Shannon Undisputed show. And of course, for those of you that do not know what is going on with that of NBA basketball, of course, the Golden State Warriors have now won their fourth NBA championship, or at least with this little dynasty that they have. They have won their fourth NBA championship within that of the past 8 years, at least of this generation. And of course, led none other by Mr. Stephen Curry, overall, who, in my view, has pretty much proved himself to be the second greatest player of the 2010s. I think at the current moment in time, it still has to be remembered as LeBron James. And probably with what he accomplished, it will always be remembered as LeBron James, at least the greatest for the 2010s. But of course, the big question is about Mr. Stephen Curry or Mr. Kevin Durant, maybe even as well as a Kawhi Leonard. What could they potentially accomplish? Could maybe they later on get to the LeBron James level, or maybe could they somewhat get there in terms of accomplishments? But this conversation that we're going to have right here, which is somewhat of a chicken and egg debate between that of two of the most talented players and two of the greatest players during the generation of which I grew up in, of watching NBA basketball, two all-time great players in my view. One of those players being Mr. Kevin Durant, who of course started out his career as a Seattle Supersonic, later transforming into the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then of course later on he would join with Golden State. And Stephen Curry, who of course for his whole entire career has always been with that of the Golden State Warriors and has managed to now win his fourth finals and overall has finally been able to win that elusive finals MVP. Well, the big question now is, does this affect Kevin Durant's legacy, or does this affect Stephen Curry's legacy? And who is the greater player between these two? And overall, if you've seen my video from about a week ago, you already know my answer to this situation. And to be quite honest with you, especially after Stephen Curry has now won his fourth NBA title, I really don't even think that it's a debate. In my opinion, Stephen Curry does have to now be looked at as the greater player than that of a Kevin Durant. You know, I said this in a Facebook poll earlier, and there was a reason why I wanted to do this video. I wasn't going to do another video of this, but I do think, all in all, that it would be good to at least put my perspective out there. In my view, Stephen Curry now, at least as things look like at the current moment in time, now that Stephen Curry has won his fourth NBA title, and Kevin Durant now is still stuck with two, and the fact that Stephen Curry has two NBA titles without that of Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant has never won NBA titles without that of Stephen Curry, I do have to say that in my view, Stephen Curry clearly has to be the greater player of that of Kevin Durant, no matter what kind of ability you think Kevin Durant has with that of the basketball. It does not matter. But anyways, overall, Skip and Shannon are going to talk about it. It's going to be a very interesting conversation, and I'm going to put all the points that not only are going to be from my perspective, but also maybe from the perspective that I've seen certain arguments from that of maybe people who are arguing in favor of Kevin Durant, because I do get maybe certain people who would argue that of Kevin Durant. I just think that Stephen Curry has to be counted as the greater player in this conversation. But we're going to talk about it. Let's tune in.
That Kevin Durant needed Golden State as much as the Warriors needed him. Both of them benefited. It was like a marriage. I think both parties should get something out of the marriage. Now, you might have gotten into the marriage for very totally different reasons, but both parties should get something out of the marriage. And I believe both parties got something out of the marriage. Kevin Durant needed championships. The Warriors wanted to continue.
I agree overall that both of those players, that it was a marriage or that it was a mutual partnership. And I think that Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant, I think that they somewhat enjoyed each other's company, or that they needed each other in order to win. Well, first of all, Kevin Durant needed Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors to even win one championship in the first place. And Stephen Curry, if he was going to continue and make that team a dynasty, he needed someone like that of a Kevin Durant. And I don't think that there's any negative thing talking about that. I think that Stephen Curry, of course, he ended up winning that first NBA Finals all the way back in 2015. Of course, that was when Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love went down, and I understand that. But let's also talk about this. Stephen Curry, the year after that, when of course he did blow that 3-1 lead against the Cleveland Cavaliers, at least he did push LeBron James to that of 7 games. And another thing we can also say is that Stephen Curry, with a similarly talented team in 2016, and of course that is not going to be what most people say, but Kevin Durant had a very talented team as well. Of course, he did have that black hole Russell Westbrook, but at the end of the day, if you're supposed to be the man, you're supposed to beat the Golden State Warriors in that playoff series. And you guys also had a 3-1 lead. And Stephen Curry overall was able to come back and he was able to beat you guys. So listen, at the end of the day, did Stephen Curry need Kevin Durant to win those two other championships against LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers? I believe so. I don't think that there's any problem with stating that. But overall, did Kevin Durant also need the Golden State Warriors in order to win a championship in the first place? And in my view, is it very highly possible that Kevin Durant may never win another championship ring in his career? I think that it's very highly possible. Listen, what I'll state is this, because this is some of the arguments that some people overall, at least, put in my direction when I stated this. They basically said, oh, well, how do do you think that Kevin Durant truly isn't going to win another championship? And, Stephen Curry just has the better coaching and the better players around him. I don't want to hear any of that shit. Now, I understand that Kevin Durant, that there were some health issues this year, but at the end of the day, you had the opportunity to possibly get past the Milwaukee Bucks, and you lost in a Game 7, I believe. Now, I'll give him a little bit of a break for that because he did put on a great performance, but all in all, you still ended up losing. But this year, the performance that Kevin Durant had over the Boston Celtics, it was absolutely abysmal. I mean, if you really take a look at the stat line, Kevin Durant, I'm not even quite sure if he shot 45% from the field in that series. And for someone all in all of that height and his size, someone who's almost a 7-footer or someone who's about 6'10", 6'11", with the ability that he has, all in all, and I understand that certain people may say, oh, well, not that long ago he had an Achilles tear. That was 2 to 3 years ago. That was overall in the NBA Finals in 2019, so that is not an excuse. Okay, it is what it is. Kevin Durant just played very poorly because Kevin Durant, even though with all of his God-given ability, he is extraordinarily talented, he is not the leader, and in my opinion, he also does not have the basketball IQ of that of a Stephen Curry. Now, if you wanted to argue that Kevin Durant, in certain terms of what he can do with the basketball, or even in terms of efficiency, versus a Stephen Curry, that all in all, that he can do a little bit more with the basketball than what Stephen Curry could, you could maybe potentially argue that. But to be honest with you, in terms of their basketball ability, I really don't think that it's as stretched, or I really don't think that it's as far apart as what many people want to say. Keep in mind that Stephen Curry, he also is a part of the 50-40-90 club. He is the only small man in the history of the NBA that probably has been as efficient as what he is and continuing to win championships. All in all, Stephen Curry, when we talk about his impact, especially for his size, there is no other player in the history of the NBA that has been as impactful or as valuable at around 6'2" or 6'3" with not A-grade athleticism. So Stephen Curry, I do believe that he actually gets disrespected and underrated in a lot of these conversations. And I know a certain amount of people that come into these combos, or they'll come in my videos and they'll say, oh, well, you're just a fanboy of Steph Curry. I'm not a fanboy of anybody out here. Every single argument that I provide with you is going to be objective and logical facts. Now, if you have Kevin Durant, above Stephen Curry, listen, that's your business. But at the end of the day, I cannot have someone, all in all, in the Kevin Durant, someone who is not a leader, has never been a leader, and also someone overall who showed up so poorly overall, not only, in this Boston Celtics series, but also choked away a 3-1 lead against that of Stephen Curry all the way back in 2016. Also could not even win 2 games against the Miami Heat and LeBron James all the way back in 2012. And Stephen Curry, overall with the teammates that he has had, he's been able to do more overall with pretty much about the same amount of talent, at least in certain areas, than that of a Kevin Durant. And a lot of people are not going to agree with that. It is what it is. Listen, for the playoffs this year against the Boston Celtics, you had yourself, you had Kyrie Irving, I believe, for all the series. James Harden was injured a little bit, but James Harden, of course, we all know what he's going to do. He usually disappears during the playoffs anyway. But if you're supposed to be the man, if you're supposed to be the main value piece, or as valuable as a leader as what a Stephen Curry is, you're supposed to, not only are you supposed to win that series, you're supposed to at least win a few games. All right, when it comes down to, or not only are you supposed to win a few games, you're supposed to win that series. Kevin Durant could not even lead his team to one victory over the Boston Celtics, and I don't even know if he shot 45% from the field throughout the majority of those games. I mean, his performance was absolutely abysmal. So at the end of the day, Kevin Durant, in my opinion, and I see certain people saying, well, this doesn't really affect his legacy. No, actually, it does affect his legacy. If Magic Johnson was able to win a championship without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, would we not be talking about Magic Johnson differently? If Shaquille O'Neal never won that ring with Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat back in 2006, would we not be having a different conversation about the Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant situation? Overall, and there's a certain amount of other things as well. If Scottie Pippen was able to lead his team to a championship with the Portland Trailblazers without Michael Jordan, wouldn't that conversation be looked at as a little bit differently? So at the end of the day, no. This does have an impact on both players' legacies. It has to. Okay, because at the end of the day, if we're just speaking logically and objectively, Kevin Durant has no championships without that of Stephen Curry. And Stephen Curry not only has 2 championships with Kevin Durant, he also has 2 championships without him. So at this current moment in time, I'm sorry, but I cannot have Kevin Durant above Stephen Curry in terms of my all-time great ladder. It just isn't possible, unless Kevin Durant wins more championships. But we'll see what happens.
Get more championships. You see, they got in there for totally different reasons, but they both got something out of this marriage. Now, okay, we've separated. Golden State said, we got us a new boo thing. We doing pretty good. We got us Andrew Wiggins. Not the player Kevin Durant is, but they're moving forward. Skip, Kevin Durant.
And so many people always talk about, or they try to discredit Stephen Curry by always trying to say things like, oh, well, take a look at the teammates that he has and blah, 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 blah. Klay Thompson was about 60% of what he was a few years ago. He tore his, not only Achilles, he also tore his ACL a couple of years ago. So don't sit here and tell me that Stephen Curry's team was just completely, absolutely loaded to the core compared to every other team out there, because that's a bunch of horse shit. All right, it is what it is. Stephen Curry's team had a certain amount of health issues as well. Okay? So don't sit here and tell me all in all that, it was just because Curry, his team was way more better. And even if you were going to use that argument, in my opinion, that's only an argument that is usually used by losers anyway. That's the same debate all in all that Aaron Rodgers fans usually love to use, or LeBron James fans love to use. They love to use that argument when basically they have no bullets or they have no more ammunition in their gun. They basically have no more arguments. So they come up with the loser poor me argument.
Talking about legacies and what impact does Steph Curry. Can you imagine the conversations we're having? Kevin Durant doesn't go to Golden State, and here he is 15 seasons, 16 because he's 16 years, but because he didn't play 15 seasons played. Can you imagine the conversations we're going to be having? Man's 15 years into the league with no championships. We have a very different discussion because he spent 3 years at Golden State. Now that Steph Curry has won, he's bookend 2015. I didn't have Kevin Durant. 17, 18, I won with Kevin Durant. Now in 22, I didn't have Kevin Durant. Oh, it's on. Now Kevin Durant can say, all I want to do is ball. Out of the titles, and I'll let y'all do it. He can say whatever he wants. But Kevin Durant knows he's a great player. He knows he's a historically great player. And Kevin Durant has pride. And one of the reasons that he left, he was never accepted into New Edition. Just like Johnny Gill. Johnny Gill could outsing, but he didn't grow up in Boston like Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike. He came in, he was the interloper. But Johnny Gill could sing. Kevin Durant went to Golden State, Skip, and he was better. He was the best player. But he was never accepted.
Well, debatably, he was the best player. And if you want to say that all around, that he was debatably the most dominant player on that team once he joined, I wouldn't really have a huge problem with that. But in my view, you could also just as easily debate that it was Stephen Curry. And this is one of the debates that certain people overall, at least, responded to me with when I tried to say that at the current moment, I believe that Stephen Curry is greater than Kevin Durant. And all in all, they would say, well, how can you say that Stephen Curry is greater than Kevin Durant when they were both on the team together? Kevin Durant won both finals MVPs. Well, that would be a little bit of a better argument if that was more of a Shaq and Kobe type of debate. But overall, that's not really what this is. Because if you take a look at Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant, if you take a look at both of their numbers in both finals that they ended up playing together, their numbers were actually very much comparable. In fact, even though I think that Kevin Durant deserved the Finals MVP in 2017, one could certainly argue that it could have went to Stephen Curry if he would have had, the right game when it came down to it, because he almost averaged a triple-double in that series. Stephen Curry, some have even said in that series that he played a little bit all around better than that of Kevin Durant. So you could argue it, but I don't mind Kevin Durant getting the Finals MVP. I thought that he was the most impactful player, or at least, the most valuable player of that final series if he wanted to. They did need someone to offset LeBron James, and it was going to be very difficult for Stephen Curry because Stephen Curry is only about 6'2", 6'3", and he's not a huge leaper, he's not a huge jumper. So at the end of the day, Kevin Durant was a way to somewhat even the scoring card in my view. Okay, so it is what it is. But in 2018, to be quite honest with you, the next finals, even though Kevin Durant, I understand why he got it, I also thought that Stephen Curry probably could have got that one. Stephen Curry probably should have got the one in 2015 when Andre Iguodala ended up getting it. And also in 2018, I thought that Stephen Curry probably could have got it as well. So it's not like Kevin Durant is just going to these finals all in all, and basically there's just no competition that Kevin Durant is clearly the best player at all 100% of the times. No, there are certain games where Stephen Curry was able overall to uplift Kevin Durant, and there were games all in all to where Stephen Curry was able to outperform him even sometimes, or able to keep right there with him. And keep in mind that Stephen Curry, that kind of overall, and he's a combo guard. He's not a complete point guard. He's not a complete shooting guard. But kind of like what a great point guard will do, they will let overall, a more talented player, at least in certain areas, or a player overall somewhat take over the team, okay? Or at least overall take up the main scoring option. And that's what Stephen Curry was able to do with that of Kevin Durant. So keep in mind that overall does have to go into Stephen Curry's legacy all in all, that he was a person all in all that was a very unselfish player. And he allowed Kevin Durant, at least in certain stretches, to take over because he knew that would be the best thing for the team. Now, some may ask, well, why would Stephen Curry not be able to take over? Well, Stephen Curry was pretty much right there neck and neck with Kevin Durant. But he knew that if they were going to beat LeBron James, that they were mainly going to have to defeat that of Kevin Durant, or excuse me, they were going to have to use Kevin Durant because to beat someone like a LeBron James, you're going to have someone that is decently big when it comes down to more than likely. Stephen Curry, could have potentially done it, but it would have just been a hell of a lot more difficult. And LeBron James's teams are always very, very talented heading into the NBA Finals anyway. So it is what it is. So that's what mainly Kevin Durant was used for, was to nullify LeBron James. And it ended up working. But anyway.
Okay. Like Steph was. He was never revered in Golden State like Steph was.
Never beloved.
I don't care what he said. It bothered him. Mm-hmm. Skip, we all want love.
Yes, it did. And Kevin Durant, that is the reason why, in my view, he ended up moving on from Golden State. And a lot of people said, well, Kevin, you shouldn't have done that. I actually highly disagree. Sometimes I think for someone to see their full potential, I think that they have to go off on their own. Whether they, end up winning or failing, no matter what it is, they have to really see how great they can be. And I think with Kobe being Bryant, I think it was the same thing with him. That's why he had Shaq off the team or ran him off. Let's just be real. That's why Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry finally split, because they wanted to see how well they would do once again without each other. And we've seen the results. So it is what it is.
We all want appreciation. We all want validation for what we do. He didn't feel he could get the proper validation being in Golden State. They love Kevin Durant. They love winning those titles, but he wasn't Steph.
Well, both Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant, and I give them actually credit for this, what they both realized is that even though they are going to be remembered as all-time greats, they're not going to be remembered the greatest of their generation more than likely, or it's going to be harder to debate that overall if they keep winning championships together, especially with their situation, because a lot of people will say with Kevin Durant, yeah, he ended up winning those championships, but Stephen Curry really was the most impactful leader on that team. Everyone knows that Stephen Curry is the leader, all in all, because they were winning championships before you even got there. And had Kevin Durant stayed there in Golden State, a lot of people would say, yeah, you're the most impactful player, but you weren't really the most important, at least allegedly, within those final series. Kevin Durant is better than you. So I actually think that it was a great thing that they both split up, because a lot of people in their NBA career, they don't end up doing that in the prime of their career, and both of them are still at the prime of their career. I just believe that they're getting towards the end of the prime of their careers. so they can truly figure out how great that they are. And luckily for Stephen Curry, anyway, at the current moment in time, he ended up winning his fourth NBA championship.
It's like Kobe. LeBron James can win the next 3 titles, and he'll never be beloved like Kobe Bryant.
Fact.
They watched Kobe come in as a 17-year-old and leave as a 37-year-old man with 3 kids.
Fact.
So Kevin Durant was never going to be beloved in Golden State like this.
But he did not know that from the start.
He thought he could.
Yes.
He's like, man, they love Steph. People love LeBron. I want that. KD, you can't make people love who they love. Skip, I look at some of these people, I'm like, well, damn, how this person got 20 million and I only got 2? How they got 300 million? People like what they like. They love what they love. You just accept that and move on. You be the best version of you. I put out the content that I like. I'm not finna do all the TikTok and standing on my head and the water challenges and all this other stuff, Skip, because that ain't who I am. KD, that pressure's on, Skip. And you know, unfortunately for you, you of all people know, the heat is on.
Really?
Yeah.
I do agree with Mr. Shannon Sharp there. The heat is on Kevin Durant. Because if he does not win another championship in his career, in my view, he will be remembered as the third, maybe even the fourth best player of his generation, or at least the greatest. I don't think, there's any doubt that Kevin Durant, in terms of ability, hell, you can even debate in terms of ability offensively, just in terms of his scoring ability, that he could be the number 1 scorer at his best of the 2010s. But in terms of leadership, in terms of actually leading a team, all in all, to an NBA championship, no, he doesn't have overall that leadership gene. He has to be the second banana, kind of like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was, all in all, to that of Magic Johnson. And some people aren't going to get what I'm saying about that. What I mean by that is that Magic Johnson was the leader, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that, I don't want to call him the sidekick, but he was the person, all in all, that was the all-around, at least in certain areas, most talented person on the team. But the reason why I put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar above Magic Johnson is because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was actually able to win an NBA championship without that of Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson was never able to win anything without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But if Magic Johnson was able to win something without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, even being with Pat Riley, I would probably have Magic and Kareem neck and neck, or I'd probably have Magic slightly ahead of him. But things didn't end up that way.
Who sung that song? But it's on.
Beverly Hills Cop. Okay. My turn. I do still love me some Kevin Durant.
Yes.
And yet, when he shrank and said no mas against the Boston Celtics, I was the first one to step up, sitting in this seat, and say, Kevin can't, because he could not. He was a disaster against Boston.
I agree, Skip. He was a disaster. That was probably the worst series, in my view, that I've ever seen Kevin Durant put on. They completely locked his ass up. And for allegedly being with, these narratives about him being with one of the all-time, greatly offensive skilled players in Kyrie Irving, which I do agree, he is one of the great offensive skilled players. For him having the talent that he had, you should have at least won a couple of games. For Stephen Curry allegedly not even being close to Kevin Durant in terms of basketball ability and skills, Stephen Curry overall seems to be doing just fine without that of Kevin Durant. And once again, people are going to say that, Steph, he had a stacked team. He didn't have a stacked team. Take a look at some of the players, all in all, once again, that Steph has around him right now. Draymond Green was absolutely horrific for half of that series. He didn't even show up for half of that series when it came down to it. Klay Thompson wasn't shooting that well. He shot like 5 of 19 or 5 of 20 something in that last game in Game 6. So it just is what it is. It was Stephen Curry. He was the reason why they won that series. Now, is that me saying that he did not have help? No, of course not. He had help. Andrew Wiggins showed up here decently. And let's also bring up that player. Does Kevin Durant overall, and this is where Stephen Curry's gravity and impact really has to be put into play, as well as his basketball ability, does Kevin Durant really have the same ability to make a team greater like that of a Stephen Curry? If Andrew Wiggins was on that of the Brooklyn Nets, would Andrew Wiggins be the same factor? Now, some people, of course, would say, well, maybe that's just not even due to 100% Stephen Curry. Maybe that's just because of the system that Steve Kerr puts him in. Yes, you could potentially say that, but Stephen Curry is the engine of that system. And that is what overall an all-time great player does. They maximize overall basically what that system could be. Tim Duncan was able to do it with the San Antonio Spurs. Michael Jordan was able to do it with the Chicago Bulls. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant were able to do it with the LA Lakers. Magic Johnson was able to do it with the LA Lakers back in the 80s. And Larry Bird was able to do it with the Boston Celtics back in the 80s as well. Stephen Curry, all in all, has been able to maximize that system, and he's been able to basically uplift every single player, almost no matter where they come from, on that team. Andrew Wiggins, before this season, was looked at as a complete bust. Now, all of a sudden, when he's on this team, overall, this team, or he looks decent, not only offensively, but even defensively, where we've never seen that from Andrew Wiggins before. So it's very clear that Stephen Curry, no matter what team that he goes on, all in all, that, no matter what team he goes on, but at least no matter what players go there and who he has around him, that he's always going to uplift them in a positive way. Not only with his attitude and his leadership ability, but with his basketball ability and with his value and impact. Because I had a person all in all reply to me earlier, and they said, well, if you put Kevin Durant on that Golden State Warriors team, and don't have Stephen Curry on there, if you replace Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry, the Golden State Warriors still win the championship this year. No, sir, I cannot agree with that one. But anyway.
Ever see anything like that from Kevin Durant? But Kyrie was sort of semi-retired. Kyrie had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and Ben Simmons had both feet out because he was not available. So it went from bad to worse over a 4-game stretch. They had a couple of chances to win the first 2 games, but then
they had the first game won.
They should have won the first game, obviously. Okay, now, bigger picture. So I give you that, but now I'm going to go back to those 2 years and what happened on July the 4th of 2016, just before we started here. Kevin Durant had had enough of little Russell Westbrook, his little brother, and he had decided once and for all, I cannot ever win a championship here in OKC with him as my primary decision maker at point guard.
I agree with that. And Russell Westbrook is never going to win an NBA championship, in my opinion, unless he almost gets it the Gary Payton way. He's never going to be, in my view, a smart enough player or a good enough or a proficient enough player. He doesn't really understand the game of basketball on a higher level, and he is just so inefficient. He really, if you take a look at it, so many Russell Westbrook fans or so many people, they always take a look at Russell Westbrook and they're like, oh, wow, just take a look at his ability. But really, Russell Westbrook, he's very limited, in my opinion, in his ability. He's an all-time great talent, especially athletically. And to a degree, yes, he can pass and he can rebound, but when you really take a look at overall the system that he usually was playing in OKC, all that was pretty much just stat padding. It really was not in the natural flow of things. If you put Russell Westbrook in the natural flow of things, he's going to look very, very limited, just like he did this year with the LA Lakers.
And I think that decision got validated this year as we saw Russ exposed on the biggest stage, the Lakers stage, as a nightmare, right? Russell Westbrook from 3 from the free throw line, and especially turning the ball over. So I think that validated Kevin's decision that a lot of people held him accountable for. Like, how could you how could you betray him? How could you leave him, that poor little Russ, behind to go join forces with a team that you had down 3-1?
Correct.
Well, Kevin would tell you, yeah, we did have him down 3-1, and I couldn't overcome my little man to get those.
Yes, and he also couldn't overcome another little man by the name of Stephen Curry. Once again, people don't give Stephen Curry excuses for blowing a 3-1 lead in 2016. There shouldn't be that many excuses for Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Yes, I understand Russell Westbrook is a limited thinker on the basketball court, but you still had a 3-1 lead. And that team, all in all, was still a very, very decent basketball team. So it is what it is.
Last game home.
Yeah, you couldn't overcome 10 of 31 and 12 of 31 in game 5 and 6. That's what you couldn't have.
Numbers, because they were worse. So they folded. I give you that. And Kevin said, I'm about to enter year 10 in this league. We're going double digits.
Yep.
I don't have anything to show for it except one MVP, but I don't have a ring. I don't even have anything close to a ring. I did play in a finals, But we were too young. We weren't ready for
They're
that.
not too young.
Yeah.
You didn't say what? So Jason Tatum was too young. When he played in the NBA Finals, he was too young because if I'm not mistaken, he was younger than Kevin Durant.
Well, Russell Westbrook was too young.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, Marcus Smart. So whatever you say, I got.
Well, you know what? I'll say this. I somewhat get where Skip Bayless is coming from, but I'm not going to use that excuse with Kevin Durant. And I don't think that Kevin Durant played the worst in the series. But once again, if you're supposed to be that man, you're supposed to lead your team to victory, or at least be the main cause of victory. And once again, Stephen Curry, without Kevin Durant, with his arsenal, he was even making a couple of finals appearances and winning finals before Kevin Durant even got there. So that's the main reason why I do not put Kevin Durant over Stephen Curry. I understand certain people's mindsets, but I cannot have a player with less MVPs, less NBA championships, less impact. And to be quite honest with you, their basketball ability is way more equal than many people overall really want to admit. In fact, it's almost getting to the point to where some may even debate Stephen Curry over Kevin Durant. And a lot of people are not going to like that. It is what it is. But listen, you cannot just sit here and tell me that the only reason why Stephen Curry is a two-time MVP, a part of the 50-40-90 club, a two-time overall NBA scoring champion, and on top of that, a four-time NBA champion, a finals MVP, a two-time MVP, all the things that he ends up having, with the proficiency that he has, with the size that he is. You cannot tell me that all of that is just because of the team and the coach and all this other stuff. Listen, I get it. It certainly is a great help. But Stephen Curry, when it comes down to it, at least ever since Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have been there, ever since he's had some decent tools around him, Stephen Curry, all in all, has always shown to be a very decent, valuable piece of the NBA.
Not an argument for that.
Okay. So here we went, and you're right. They communicated, and Kevin's saying, well, I don't care what the world says. I'm going to choose that team because he's looking at the bigger picture because that team had just folded.
And let's also keep in mind that Kevin Durant in 2012, that LeBron James had not yet won an NBA championship. So one could argue that Kevin Durant, that if he truly was the man, that he should have won that NBA championship. Because there are certain times to where you can argue to where people are a little bit too young or inexperienced, even though they clearly are on a great stage or at a great point. Kind of like when Canelo fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., for example. Now, I'm not going to state 100% that when Canelo lost to Mayweather, that it was just 100% because Canelo, he was just way too green and Canelo would beat up Floyd today. That's not necessarily what I'm going to say, but is it fair to say that maybe Canelo was not necessarily quite at his peak yet, like what he would be today? I think that's fair to say. But I'm not going to give Kevin Durant that excuse because LeBron James, his first NBA championship, was off of Kevin Durant and that OKC Thunder team. And they ended up beating them within 5. So it is what it is.
Against LeBron and Kyrie and
Yes.
Kevin Love, but just folded. Against LeBron's team with a 3-1 lead, little Steph had come up even smaller than he was. He shrank.
And for those of you, of course, that wonder about my Mayweather and Canelo comparison, because Mayweather had been in so many A-grade championship fights, and he clearly was the number one pound-for-pound fighter, not only of the world at the time, but of the generation. So that's why maybe you could argue that Canelo, he was, I'm not going to say green, but you can say that he was not at his absolute peak, even though he was still in his prime years. You can say that he's a better fighter now today than what he was back then. I don't think that that's completely unfair to say. But anyway.
Disappeared. He was a nightmare for the last 3 games, 2 of the 3 at home, to the point that Draymond, according to you, fled into the parking lot, calling Kevin on his cell phone saying, you got to come save us.
Well, KD could have hit decline. I mean, let me ask you a question.
No.
When somebody's calling...
Well, I understand Skip Bayless's point, but listen, at the end of the day, was Kevin Durant an NBA champion before Stephen Curry was? Was Kevin Durant an NBA champion without Stephen Curry? If he was, then I think we would have I would be having a completely different conversation. But at the end of the day, now Stephen Curry has 2 NBA championships without Kevin Durant. Period. Point blank. Excuse me. I don't care what the coaching is. I don't care the players around him. Kevin Durant has had a decent enough amount of talent. And if he allegedly is so much more skilled than that of Stephen Curry, then he overall is supposed to have another NBA championship. Okay? It is what it is, especially now that he was with the Brooklyn Nets, or at least get out of the first round. You got completely overall punked by those Boston Celtics. You looked absolutely horrific. All right? Anyway.
Skip Bayless.
I mean, Kevin Durant against the Boston Celtics. Allegedly, Kevin Durant has way more basketball ability than that of Stephen Curry. But tell me overall how Kevin Durant. Tell me all in all how Kevin Durant. I don't even think he shot 45% from the field in that series. Hell, he may have not even shot 40%. How goddamn bad he was in that series. But Stephen Curry shot 48% from the field and over 40% from three. Anyway.
He doesn't want to talk. What is he here? Decline.
I take them all.
No, you don't. You don't. No, you don't. I'm busy right now. Can I call you back? That's what I get. I get, can I call you later? That's what I get.
I'm on the treadmill. Okay, so did they need each other? I guess so. But I'm going to drive home this point to you. Kevin Durant actually chose the hardest road, the most dangerous road, the one that was fraught with finals peril, because he knew exactly what was about to transpire. LeBron ain't going anywhere. He is going to walk back through that finals door twice more in Cleveland. And he's going to be accompanied by Kyrie once and Kevin Love once, and then it's going to be just Kevin, right?
Right.
But he's going to walk back through that door, and he's LeBron freaking James. And Kevin is saying, big picture, Kevin's got a high basketball IQ, and he's got a good sense of sort of history and what's about.
He's got a decent basketball IQ, but Kevin Durant actually does not have as high of a basketball IQ as what some people think, because sometimes he gets too much caught up in hero ball, and I do believe that is a little bit of a result of the Billy Donovan and OKC Thunder system early on, but it is what it is. Because Stephen Curry, one thing you notice about him is that he can play off the ball very, very well. He's an impact with the ball, whether he shoots, 15 for 21 or whether he shoots 7 to 21. Stephen Curry is a great impact out there because he moves very, very well without the ball, which is not something that everyone can do.
Fire, and he says, you know what? I'm going to go head-to-head with LeBron, and I'm going to show everybody that I can take the team that folded under his gaze, and I'm going to match I'm going to look him right in the eye and...
Listen, I understand where Skip Bayless is coming from, and I give Kevin Durant a hell of a amount of credit for that there must have been a great amount of pressure on him. But, I mean, Skip Bayless, would you really argue that, all in all, that is the hardest route for Kevin Durant? Because we all know you wouldn't argue that for LeBron James. We all know that you wouldn't argue that for Stephen Curry. Would you say that, LeBron James took the hardest route by joining, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh because there was so much pressure on him? And I give LeBron James and Kevin Durant a great amount of credit because there's so many athletes, there's so many people actually that they always claim to want certain things or they want to have certain chances. But when the chance is actually provided to them or gifted to them, they don't seem to want to take it. And the reason why that is because so many people out here are really afraid of their own destiny, or they're afraid that they're not going to be as great as what they hype themselves up to be. Like Aaron Rodgers, for example. Aaron Rodgers has been talking so much shit for the past several seasons about how allegedly, he never gets any help and he doesn't have the defenses. But then when the opportunity was presented to him, overall, a multitude of times within the past few seasons or the past several years, to go on to another team, to possibly take his championship caliber ass somewhere else, he didn't take it. So what does that basically tell you about Aaron Rodgers? He does not even believe that he is going to win a second Super Bowl. He is basically telling you, overall, I am no more than a one championship caliber quarterback. Okay? So it is what it is. So I do give Kevin Durant and LeBron James a lot of credit for doing what they did. They took their destiny into their own hands. They took their legacy into their own hands, and they said, whether I win or whether I fail, whether I am victorious or whether I'm a failure with this, I will know that I did what is best for me. And I believe that Kevin Durant going on the Brooklyn Nets, I believe that is truly overall what was best for him, at least in his mind. It's also what was best for Stephen Curry. And I don't think that Stephen Curry I don't think overall that he has any overall regrets about Kevin Durant going to Brooklyn whatsoever. Because Stephen Curry knows what this means for his legacy.
Game threes in his house in the finals, and I'm going to be the finals MVP, and that's what he did. That's pressure. He could have just chosen another contender. He could have gone to Miami or Dallas or somewhere and just said, I'm going to try to do this here. But the whole NBA world said, spotlight's on you, because when they got to the finals, trust me, we were there in 2017
Yes.
then. The whole NBA world is waiting for 7-foot-tall Kevin Durant to fall all the way down on his face.
Yeah.
That's what you were waiting for.
It's easy to...
Yes, just like a lot of people were waiting for LeBron James in 2011 to fall on his face, which he did that first season. But listen, at the end of the day, I've never bought into that argument. Don't get me wrong, I give LeBron James and Kevin Durant a great amount of credit for taking their legacy into their own hands. That's what the all-time greats do. They basically, make their own path. But don't sit here and tell me this bullshit about, oh, well, there was just that much more pressure on Kevin Durant and, these guys because all in all, they joined the most stacked team. Like get the fuck out of here. When Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors, they had championship aspirations. Get that shit out of here. All right. When LeBron James ended up joining with Miami, they had championship aspirations. Okay. So, when Aaron Rodgers overall eventually became the all-time great quarterback for Green Bay, and a lot of people always say this about Aaron Rodgers. I never fell for this shit. I never personally thought it was a good point. People say, oh, well, take a look at what he had to live up to. He had to live up to Brett Favre, and there's so much substance to that. I don't give a shit what he had to live up to. What are your accomplishments? And at the end of the day, Kevin Durant has no championships without Stephen Curry. He just doesn't. Right? He just doesn't.
Say, I'm going there. I would have looked LeBron in his eye when you got the U.S. military behind you. He had the
what had the U.S. military done against LeBron before?
Skip, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying they needed each other. But this notion,
I agree.
All I'm saying is this: Kevin Durant, since he left Golden State, he has one series win. The Golden State Warriors just won the NBA final. Okay, we just talked about now Tom Brady and Coach Belichick.
Right, but look at the surge.
And so many people always talk about, well, the Golden State Warriors, they just have so much talent. How come, almost every single year that Stephen Curry is on a team, how come the team overall just seems to have very, very rich talent? Even a couple of years ago when he didn't make the playoffs, he missed the playoffs, I believe, by one game, and that really was not that good of a team. Klay Thompson was out for the whole entire year. They had D'Angelo Russell, who, is an okay player, but he's not really a great player. All of a sudden, to Stephen Curry, they're on Stephen Curry's team. They're all of a sudden an all-star caliber player. All of a sudden, Andrew Wiggins is playing his ass off. He's playing like he never has before. Jordan Poole, who, of course, seems decently talented. Do you think that some of these players would be the same players that they would be without that of a Stephen Curry? Do you think that Kevin Durant would be allowed to perform as well in the NBA Finals as what he did, without Stephen Curry? So it goes both ways. Kevin Durant, there's a reason why so many of these players have performed at their optimal level or at their best potential level with that of a Stephen Curry, because that's what an all-time great player does. Do you think that Tony Parker, and do you think that Manu Ginobili, and overall, what the hell was his name? Kawhi. Well, I won't mention Kawhi Leonard because he of course became a great player later on. But a lot of these guys are imprinted for that later on in their career. Do you think that Scottie Pippen would have been the same player without Michael Jordan? No, probably not. Do you think Kareem would have as many championships without Magic Johnson? No, probably not. But the difference between Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's situation, or Shaquille O'Neal or Kobe Bryant's situation, is that Stephen Curry was even able to win championships before Kevin Durant got there, and he was now able to win another championship after he left. So Stephen Curry, in my view, has to be counted as greater than that of Kevin Durant.
So you say injuries dictate, right? Well, did they not dictate the first go-around? Because Kyrie wasn't there for him, and James is dragging his hamstring around as usual, and it's Kevin by himself against Milwaukee, soon-to-be champion, and hits the shot of shots that almost beat them.
Is he that guy? Is he top 10 or not? Is he that guy or not? Because that's what you told me about LeBron James. If LeBron freaking James is that guy, he has a 2-1 lead.
Shannon Sharp was getting so worked up, he didn't even say LeBron right. He said LeBron.
Kevin Durant had a 2-0 lead on Milwaukee.
Yeah, and he should have brought it home and hit the shot that should have brought it home, and he had a toenail on the line.
He brought it home or not?
Yeah.
All I want to know, did you drop the eggs or not? Do I got a dozen eggs or are they cracked?
Did he not give you virtuosos in 5 and 7? Virtuosos.
No, he in 5.
Yeah, 5 and 7.
Let's be real, Skip Bayless. If that were Mr. Stephen Curry or LeBron James, you would not be having the same energy. And I give Kevin Durant a great amount of credit, even for the performances that he had last year in a losing effort against Milwaukee, because there was injuries. But let's also be real. One of the finals that Stephen Curry lost against the Toronto Raptors, he pretty much had no chance within those final couple of games because not only was Kevin Durant not there, there were so many goddamn injuries. Klay Thompson ended up going down. Kevin Looney ended up going down, I believe, with a broken clavicle. there were so many pieces overall of that team that ended up overall going down. Same thing overall a little bit in 2016 as well. So, it is what it is. If you want to keep that energy there, keep the same energy.
Ran out of gas. He ran out of gas in 7, Skip. You even said it yourself.
You came out here and said the next day it was 1 on 5.
Hey, ran out of gas. I didn't know gas prices was that high back then.
Yeah.
He didn't fill up. He should have filled up.
I watched LeBron, quote unquote, run out of gas in Game 4 against these same Warriors in 2015. What? 2 games to 1.
The Warriors.
What?
The Warriors.
Yeah.
He ran out of gas against Milwaukee.
Oh, okay.
Oh, book.
No, the team that was about to win it all.
Well, to be fair, the Milwaukee Bucks did win it all last year, Shannon, but I understand what your point is.
Giannis.
The team that won it all.
Yeah, way to go. Congratulations.
Effing Stephen.
Yeah. Well,
Wardell Curry's on the map
Shannon,
now.
Is
extra
he?
credit for the serenade.
Yes, he is, Skip, and there's no offense against Skip Bayless, but he's very pissed off because he's been basically hating on Stephen Curry ever since overall he lost to LeBron James in 2016 because he hates LeBron James's guts. And listen, I understand. I think that a lot of the conversations about LeBron James, in my view, being in the GOAT conversation, I think that they're a little bit obnoxious as well because I don't think that he's really there. You cannot be 4-6 in NBA Finals and have the meltdown that you did overall against the Dallas Mavericks. And even if we really want to nitpick, shoot below 40% from the field in 2008 and 2015. But I don't want to go there very much because, to be fair to LeBron James, he pretty much overall was by himself, at least in certain moments of those series. But, Skip Bayless is very salty right now. But what I will tell you is this. If Stephen Curry ends up winning a 5th championship, I bet you money Skip Bayless is going to start debating that Stephen Curry is over LeBron James. I have no doubt about it whatsoever. But anyway.
I love the sound effects. And guys, here's your music trivia for today. The late, great Glenn Frey was the one who sang The Heat Is On.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for watching.
Anyways, that's really about it for this video, but I just thought that would be very particularly interesting. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. And we will see what Mr. Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant do from here on out. I think that these next few years, if they do potentially win championships, is going to be very, very big for their legacy. But we'll see overall what Mr. Kevin Durant does with the Brooklyn Nets. They are a very decently talented team. They are going to have Ben Simmons himself, Kyrie Irving, I believe, maybe James Harden. I don't really know where the hell James Harden is going to go when it comes down to it. But James Harden, in my opinion, he's pretty much done. He is not going to win as a vital piece, in my opinion. And on top of that, he's just not proficient enough off the ball. Which, once again, people take a look at James Harden and Russell Westbrook so much, and they love to circle jerk over, oh my God, take a look at their stats. There are so many players like a Stephen Curry who could have those stats if they truly wanted to. But the big question is, can you also play well off the ball? And people who usually play in that system don't play well off the ball. That's why James Harden and Russell Westbrook as a second or third option, they can't do shit. They're highly improficient. Or inefficient. But anyways, that's really about it. Congratulations to Mr. Stephen Curry on winning his 4th NBA championship and finally a Finals MVP. And that's pretty much all I got for today. But thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.